flipping all of you die, one at a time. Those are the facts, we don't throw dice. Ready to fire, ready or not, we let it decline.
There's nothing you can do. RNG are your nightmare.
Set it off like this, set it off like this. Burn it up, no.
Welcome back to MSI 2022 in Busan, South Korea. Today is the final day of groups, the last two spots in the Rumble stage up for grabs. T1 obviously looking safe, but right behind them, we have a fight between Dead Nation Focus Me, Team Ace, and the Saigon Buffaloes. Who will make it? It all comes down to this. Once again, we're back at the Endless Dance Sky and Quickshot, joined by Aux and Raz. It has been a long week. It is an early morning for us. Aux, you're excited for the last day of groups?
Absolutely. I think this is a banger group. We have that fight for second, which is super exciting. I think it's a hard one to call.
Yeah, and I wouldn't count out Team Ace too. I feel like they're going to be the team that plays spoiler in one of these teams here.
I mean, it's going to be a difficult day for them, a lot to improve from what we saw in the first round robin. Before we get to today's matches and games, though, we have finalized both Group B and Group C. So I want to take a brief moment to summarize the Group C standings. G2 went undefeated 8-0. Order unable to pick up any of the games whatsoever. And Raz, EG, very clearly better than Order, not really able to get those final steps over G2. So when we look ahead to Rumble, there's some development and improvement needed.
Yeah, sadly not able to take a win, as you mentioned, but it felt like it was getting closer and closer, and they were getting closer to their team identity that we last left them in spring finals. So looking forward to seeing what they can do in Rumble.
Yeah, I think a big thing is EG started to play a bit more like they did in the playoffs, right? Started to lean more on Danny being that teamfight carry, which is so instrumental. And, you know, they're still going to the Rumble stage. If they can take lessons from this, it should set them up well.
And it's this guy in front of your screen, the LAC MVP, and also Jojo Pyong getting a little better throughout the series. But for me, it was Inspired. That was like the standout performer of the group on Evil Geniuses.
I mean, definitely the case. And I want to see whether or not Danny can find a larger impact with his team. When I saw that Jinx locked in against G2 yesterday, I got a little nervous.
Yeah.
Then I got very nervous when G2 threw with Baron, but it wasn't enough. And I think for Evil Geniuses, some development, some work to be done. I'm very excited to see what G2 can do as well against the other first seeds from the group, especially in that mid lane matchup. Talking about that, let's talk a little bit more about the fact that, you know, Caps was really popping off. We went full claps, really shining all day long.
That for me was the most fun about this one. I saw this one on front page of Reddit. The fact that Evil Geniuses are like, yeah, that's a kill. Vulcan not going to take it from him, but Caps being able to outplay this. And he was so close to being able to take the kill on towards Vulcan too. He's just such an exciting player to watch.
And I feel like, you know, expectations were high for him when we saw him perform in playoffs in the LEC, but he has just met those expectations. It feels like he's even risen. He has been dominating the mid lane.
Yeah, and it's all forms of play too. It's not just on the high mechanical plays like the LeBlanc and the Silas. The Anivia and was one pick that stood out to me. I think the Galio as well. Like, he can play really anything that the team needs from him.
Yeah, a lot of creativity, a lot of experimentation in some ways, and of course, that man over there definitely coming back for the title. Let's turn our attention to Group B. Yesterday, RNG and PSG Talent, they both advanced to the Rumble stage. RNG, undefeated, technically 9 games, officially 6-0, but I mean, phenomenal, dominant performance. And PSG, they had to work for that spot because candidates and wildcards, they really were competitive between the three of them.
Yeah, I think PSG definitely ramped up, but there was such a fight for that second seed. The fact that they did end up dropping that game to Red Canids, who are now out. But man, RNG, the gap in that game between them and PSG seemed massive.
RNG and T1, in my head, the most likely finalists.
Yes.
We need to see how G2 match up against them, but RNG, they've got something to prove.
Yeah, and for RNG, the fact that I felt like when they played their final 3 games, you know, there's going to be some wear and tear, but they showed a little bit of kind of new picks for themselves. I love the fact that when the first pentakill was wiped out, Kala said, I can do one better on the Kai'Sa, right? We talked about it a little earlier on. So it's just fun to see them play and dominate in early laning phase and be such a strong team fighting team.
It is terrifying to see them play. Now I cannot wait to see them in the Rumble stage. I want to give everybody at home just a quick reminder of the 4 teams that have qualified already. Evil Geniuses, G2, PSG, and RNG.
Starting to fill up.
We'll be adding 2 more teams today. Augs, what are you most interested in seeing when you look at these 4 teams in Rumble?
I mean, I just have to say RNG against G2. I think the problem with Group C is that there was a very clear gap between like EG and Order, but also between EG and G2. I don't think G2 have been tested yet.
Yeah, and from that list, the funniest thing is that like T1's not listed. We all know T1's going to be
will be
listed.
there.
But
One
it's like,
win.
It's like that dong from Undertaker. Everyone, the moment you know he's officially in, the rest of the teams that are confirmed in Rumble stage are going to be fretting.
And the thing that I absolutely love, T1, RNG, G2, all former MSI champions, looking to pick up another title. Let's turn our attention towards the battle of the day, however, for the final 2 spots in that Rumble stage, as the teams in Group A will be hitting the Rift.
저희가 작년에 4강에서 떨어진 것이
All legends and old legacies. Goodbye, FLICKR. Goodbye, T1.
오히려 저희가 스프링 때 좀 더 동기부여를 가지고 열심히 할 수 있는 계기가 된 것도 어느 정도 있는 것 같고요. 개인적으로는 가장 강한 T1이냐고 물어보면 결과가 보여줄 것 같습니다.
공격적이라고 해도 분명 실수가 나올 거고 그 실수를 잘 캐치해서 저희가 게임의 흐름을 주도적으로 할 수 있도록 준비를 잘 하겠습니다.
La última partida que tuvimos contra T1 no fue muy buena, pero siento que podemos dar pelea y
Taki và Sorin gắt nóng lòng để đụng độ Gumayusi và Keria.
Bọn em đã chuẩn bị rất là kỹ.
계속 무패를 할 수 있도록 노력하고 있습니다.
全然なんというか不安はないですね。
Si tú puedes obtener una oportunidad y explotarla, que la puede ganar al final.
Càng quyết tâm đem hết nhiệt huyết để thi đấu hết khả năng của mình.
여기는 우리나라고 우리 고향인 만큼 압박이 되진 않고 이제는 이길 차례입니다.
Yet another phenomenal video. Today, stoic, serious, contemplative, and it's going to be a tough task. I mean, FLICKR doing a lot of chatting there. If you ask me if this is the best T1, the results will speak for themselves. Let's talk a little bit about the 3 teams most likely competing for those final 2 spots in Rumble. Of course, Team A's, they've got a lot to prove, so we'll get to them later in the day, but I want to start with the currently undefeated T1. 3-0 in the group. They're also undefeated throughout the entirety of 2022. And of course, the very first video we saw at the beginning of MSI where FLICKR said, you know, T1, we're back. He said, I never left.
He never left, and also the result is currently speaking for themselves. Like, the fact that he and the team is just simply not losing should be something that's scary. And it's not as if we look towards what's happening in the bot side of the map, this is what happened versus Detonate from Focus Me, but when they went up against Saigon Buffaloes, sure, they were losing early on the bot side of the map, but it did not matter. The rest of the team can carry. Anyone on this team can carry. And I'm waiting for that one game that, like, hey, we can look towards the top lane from Zeus, and he can come on in his gangplank and be a terror on the map.
And I want to give a huge shout out to Ona, right? We had the all-star team in the LCK. He was the only member of T1 not to get voted for that, and then came back in the finals to get MVP. And honestly, he has been my MVP for T1 so far in this tournament. Such a strong performer, consistently finding advantages, consistently performing in those skirmishes, and really driving this team forward.
One of the things I've enjoyed watching the 3 games T1 have played thus far is they seem to be having fun. Like, there's a looseness to their game that's enjoyable. Will Ona play Vi again?
We could see it. Honestly, I'm going to say it, like, I'm not sold on the pick, but he did make it look like viable. He made it work.
I think he will. I think we will see a second Vi. If a jungler is playing as well as he is, he gets the green card. If he's gonna say, "Hey, I want to pick Vi," here, coach says, "Say less."
Well, T1, of course, favorite to top the group. Coming in right behind them, Saigon Buffalo. They're fighting to continue that VCS legacy. The very first game where we did see the bottom lane jumping onto Gumayusi and Keria, really pushing them to the limit. Saigon Buffalo right now 1 game ahead of Detonation Focus Me, but that is a hard-fought game. It was a slightly sloppy game. So for Saigon, I want to see some cleaner play from them. And also, I want to see how they're going to channel T1 again.
Yeah, and remember, Saigon Buffaloes, if we're just talking about the history of the VCS, they've had such a large impact at international events. You know, we've seen the Gigabyte Marines and Levi, and I feel like people only see this team or this region as a one-team region. That is not the case.
No, it's not. And of course, because Saigon Buffalo, they're technically the 2nd seed from the VCS.
Yes.
Gigabyte Marines are playing Southeast Asia games. We saw the clips there. like Levi, Gigabyte Marines, those are the names everyone knows, but Shogun and the Buffaloes, they have proven that they can play the VCS style here on the international stage.
And this is such a young roster, and to not win your region but then come here and perform so well gives me such hope for the region as a whole.
Yeah, and it's not the first time we saw the Buffaloes with Zeros when back in actually when they were playing in Vietnam at last MSI. And they're the team, the organization that took down G2 way back when.
Yeah, definitely the case. I mean, storied region, storied team, very impressive thus far. Saigon Buffalo 2-1 in the group, and the team is standing in their way. That's maybe going to cause them some headaches. Detonation Focus Me. This is the most dominant, most successful LJL team ever. And of course, we saw them make Worlds groups last year. You know, surprising, impressing, developing the LJL consistently getting better and better. But they're down, so today they need to show it again by taking down VCS.
Exactly, and prove a point not to the fans in their region, but to the world that even if they've lost Gang, of course, he ended up going to the Korean military and losing Arya to the LCK, they can still do it and go further than they did in the last. Look at the thumbs up from Evie. And you heard from him coming into today off his point saying that like he doesn't feel intimidated at all.
Yeah, and honestly, this team has done so much for the region on the international stage, but also attracted so many international fans, given the team so much respect, you know, getting access to higher level scrims as a result of their performance, and I hope they can continue that.
I mean, the geographical location really helps them out. They have the ability to play VCS, PCS, LCK, LPL.
Yes.
You know, they're surrounded by everyone, and I think that's partially why DFM are doing so well. Very quick hit just before we do move on. Team Ace is the team that now is the huge underdogs. It's 0-3. Stylistically, it's a big mismatch. We'll dive deeper into that in a little bit. But for Team Ace, they've had a couple days to improve. We need to see some big changes if they want to try and surprise.
We really do, and it really is, I know we'll talk about it soon enough, but the early game.
Yeah.
For this team, it's been about their bot lane, and it hasn't been about anything, as they've been stumbling on all fronts. And so for this team, it's on for them to just have the best showing possible for their fans at home.
Let's find out if there's going to be any surprises today, Rez. I certainly hope so. The games that we have on the docket today will be on your screen in just a moment. And a reminder that if there are any tiebreaker games, they will be played after the regularly scheduled matches conclude. And there is a maximum mathematical amount of 2 tiebreakers possible depending on the results, and we'll keep you up to date as the results start to come in. But for anyone tracking, 1 T1 win versus DFM in that second game will lock them into the Rumble stage. I think that is the expected result. Let's see if DFM can surprise. And before we dive into our pre-match, let's focus on the featured matchup of the day. It is presented by Mercedes-Benz. Shogun versus Europon, the rookie versus the veteran, and they'll face off in Game 3.
Shogun has lived up to his name and absolutely dominated in his last game against the representatives from the LJL.
It's going to be a flip. Seal's going to go. He can't get it. Shogun shuts it down. Yaharong is trying to make it happen. And Shogun is going off in these team fights.
For this player and this team specifically that came in second in their region, they seem determined to keep the fight for second in Group A interesting.
Oh, hold on. Oh, that's a big calling though. Unicorn now, no W left. It might have been a bait. It looks like Genius. This Shogun just takes out Unipon.
Unipon has been a familiar face at international events and finally broke through Group's last Worlds.
やっぱりいろいろすごい若いチームだとそのアグレッシブにいろいろもうおじけづかずにやってくるってことは結構あると思うんですけれども、まあ僕たちはすごいそれに冷静に対処してやっていきたいなって思ってます。
In the wrong way is this having it with the flip, and Viego is going to find the double kill.
In this featured matchup, presented by Mercedes-Benz, it is a battle to see who will get out of Group B.
Oh, excellently voiced over there,
Who did that?
Raz.
Damn.
Now,
Great job.
give me the TLDR, the rookie versus the veteran, Unipon versus Shogun. Tell me about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, Unipon was the OG of Detonation Focus Me. When the LJL first came through and Detonation Focus Me became that team, it was Unipon in the bot lane that was really holding it down, and so it was 10 plus years for him, and he's going up against a player that is really such a young face in the scene.
I've got to say, like, domestically, I don't think Shogun particularly stood out, especially they didn't even win the regional finals, but they have been such a pleasure. Him and Taki just constantly challenging in these bot lane 2v2s and doing it successfully against what everyone views as the best bot lane in the world.
Yeah, and I mean, for Taki, actually, I remember reading in an interview the fact that he was kind of being compared as the carry of Vietnam because of how creative he can be, right? But he doesn't want to be known as the carry of Vietnam. He just wants to be known as Tacky.
Yes.
Like, talking about being on an international stage and just being known, the same can be said for Shogun, and he's really making a name for himself in all of these incredible moments, the Lucian play that he had.
And look at these statistics, Raz. Look at Shogun.
Oh my
Plus
goodness.
1.4k gold at 14, 35% kill share, significantly high damage per minute as well. That will be game 3. That's going to be a very exciting battle for that 3rd place. But let's remind each other, the last time these two teams faced off against one another, it was the Buffaloes that came out on top, but it was also a lot of action around the top lane, right?
Yes, there was a lot of action in the top lane. It was Detonation Focus Me that were setting up for dives. Hasmet hated his life as he started 0 and 3 in this game, and it felt like it was all but over. But the man had a strong mentality, because if he tapped to the bottom side of the map, it was actually Shogun and Taki that were doing really well.
And critically, that came to fruition in the team fight, so we saw Shogun on that Lucian able to do so much. And it felt like the Urgot, despite being ahead, just wasn't able to find the same windows, wasn't able to deliver as effectively.
Yeah, it was just so fun to watch. And I feel like it was those critical moments in the mid lane where, you know, Shogun opening up on his ultimate on towards Yutapun and eviscerating him. It was those really back and forth team fights that the LJL's representative and Detonation Focus Me are going to look back and say, we just need to perform better in those moments.
Both teams, I think, will want to be a little bit cleaner today.
Yes.
We'll see if they can. Before our first game, let's hear from Team Aces straight on their MSI journey so far.
Siento que no estamos jugando como venimos jugando normalmente en nuestra región y nos sentimos bastante presionados, diría, nerviosos. Tenemos que hacer algo para cambiar eso. Castigan cosas que en nuestra región no te castigan y te obligan a mejorar mucho más rápido de lo que tienes que mejorar en tu región. Entonces, podemos hacer mucho más de lo que estamos haciendo ahorita. Entonces, todavía quedan 3 juegos en los que podemos ganar y aún está decidido el grupo. Aún pueden pasar muchas cosas en las cuales podemos clasificar, pero tenemos que encontrar la manera de jugar bien y seguros. Si bien los resultados han sido un poco caóticos, pues siento que aún podemos hacerlo.
I'm very appreciative that straight from Team Ace was able to comment and mention that, you know, teams here in this group stage are able to punish things that, you know, they don't get punished for back from their own region and their home league. And of course, for our first game of the day, it's do or die for LATAM Hopefuls Team Ace. They're facing off against the Rumble chasing Saigon Buffalo. And for Team Ace, I only have things that need to get better. This team has struggled so far at MSI. They really need to stabilize their early game. And you'll see in a moment that at 14 minutes, their average gold deficit is minus 6,000. This is a team that is getting bullied, that is getting rushed, but it is a stylistic mismatch because all 3 of their opponents much stronger, much faster.
Yeah, and it's been really tough, as you've mentioned, just from step 1 in having good early skirmishes. Their strong point domestically has been 5 Kid and straight in the bot side of the map, but they've just been losing 2v2s consistently. And I looked at Dimitri and Lonely in the top side of the map, and it's just been really unlucky how those skirmishes have worked. So they just need to review that and just get better in the first 5 minutes.
And I feel like we haven't been able to see what this team showed domestically because they haven't got to that part of the game. They've just been shut down early. And I think if we're looking at anyone to step up and deliver, it has to be Dimitri. He has to be able to mitigate that early pressure and just make sure the team doesn't fall behind so far.
I mean, we see the stats on your screen. We're less than a minute to pick some bans. It is a tough task to just say, get good at early game. I think draft can help, and I do think if Dimitri's able to be in the right place, the right time, the right prep, that can help too.
That's why these days, coming up until today's games, were important. They're just reviewing some of the VODs.
Yeah.
Because when they went up against T1, so many of those fights were on a knife's edge in the early game. And obviously those stats, because of it, are going to look egregious. But it is just small tweaks in those early games that will make the difference.
Just don't opt into too many early skirmishes. Try and track the enemy jungle, support your lanes, crashing waves, defending from dives, and hope you can get to the stage of the game where you can contest.
Let's see whether or not Team Ace can pull off this miracle comeback today as we'll leave it to our casters for the final day of MSI 2020.